Talktainment Radio, worldwide sound. Talktainmentradio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard. I'm Brother K, Brother Kahari, sitting in every week with Mr. Fuller. And, of course, let's bring in the man himself, Mr. Neely Fuller, the author of two of the most definitive works on racism, white supremacy, and the whole concept behind it, even in the modern day, with many people saying that it doesn't exist, some saying that it does, and that it's not like that anymore. We're going to get into this whole multiracial kind of configuration. And, of course, we've got a lot of things that have come up just recently that raise the specter. Has racism been eliminated? So we're going to get into that and some other things. But first of all, let's bring in Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller, how are you, sir?
I'm still learning.
All right, Mr. Fuller, we can get your works by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. That's one word, produce, P-R-O-D-U-C-E, justice, J-U-S-T-I-C-E. Those are words that we should know backwards, producejustice.com. And, Mr. Fuller, the name of the two definitive works?
The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, that's the basic title that is explained within the books themselves, but the general title, the title that people could more easily comprehend, textbook, workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of white supremacy. That's a textbook, workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of white supremacy. And that's directed to the individual person who perceives him or herself as being a victim of white supremacy. Now, that's not a popular phrase to use. Most people do not like to consider themselves victims, but then that raises a question. Either you are or you aren't, and only the person, him or herself, can determine that. The individual person will say, am I under a system of racism, or am I free to do whatever I want to do, when I want to do it, go where I please, do what I want to do with no opposition based on color? Am I able to do this? Have I proven that I'm able to do this? If the answer is yes, then none of what I've written would apply to that person.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Mr. Fuller, a lot of things have been going on. A lot of people are waiting to talk to you. But is there anything, before we get to that, is there anything that you have looked at this week? There's been so much. Is there anything that you've looked at this week or has been said to you this week that you'd like to get into before we start taking our calls? Mr. Fuller, go ahead.
Yes, sir. One thing that I've received calls, including from as far south as South America, about having conversations about race. And people have told me that it's very difficult to talk to even family members. If you bring up race and whatnot, they just tune you out, and they say, oh, what are you talking about this for? I mean, talk about something else. I mean, you're sitting up talking about racism. Sure, racism, it exists and all like that, but I don't want to have a conversation about it. I mean, let's talk about something else. So, if a person raises that question, any person, you just simply say, okay, no problem. what do you want to talk about? And then let the person talk about whatever it is, the subject that they think is important, whatever the subject is. And it usually has something to do with what a person wants to do. And so I have framed a response. This response is not in the book yet. It will be in an updated version, hopefully. And there are 4 questions that you use when you're in a conversation with anybody about accomplishing something. If the conversation is about trying to do something, because every minute of every day, somebody, or rather everybody, every organism on the planet wants to do something. If it's a person, if it's an animal, if it's an insect, everything that moves, what we call the breathing organisms, wants to do something from one minute to the next, even if it's no more than just get up out of the one chair and move to the other side of the room to sit in another chair. Okay, so everybody wants to do something all day long. So that's what you center on. What is it that you want to do? Mary, Joe, William, what is it that you want to do today? What is it you want to do? Because everybody wants to do something. So that's the first question. What is it that you want to do? And let the person tell you. Then the next question is, why do you want to do what you want to do? Because you have a reason for wanting to do whatever it is you want to do. You want to do something. You just told me what you want to do. You want to enroll in school, or you want to go across town and visit your cousin, or you want to go to the casino, or you want to go to the beach. The weather's warm now and whatnot. What do you want to do? So the next question is, why do you want to do it? And let them tell you. Mm-hmm. Then you say, how do you plan to do what you want to do? Okay, because if you plan to do whatever it is, no matter how simple it is, if you're just baking a cake, say, well, I intend to go, first of all, to the store and get the ingredients for baking the cake. So that's what I want to do. So I'm on my way to the store, and I plan to go to the store, and my plan is written down because I have to have the ingredients for the cake. So I plan to go to the store and get what I have written down for the ingredients that's going into the cake that I'm going to spend all morning baking. All right. That's a plan. Then the 4th question, most important question. What do I expect the constructive result to be? Or what do you expect the constructive result to be? Underline the 2 words, constructive and result. Because everything that you do, everything that a non-white person on this planet under the system of white supremacy says or does from one minute to the next should have a constructive result. Otherwise, you're way off course of what you should be doing while you're on this planet. The whole time you're on it, you're way off course. If you can't frame in your own words what you expect the constructive result to be. If, one black person walking down the street say, hey, man, let's go, let's. Always watch for that word let's. I've told people this. Watch for the word let's. Let's go over here and do, and then they'll tell you what they want you to participate in that they have just come up with. So you ask those same questions. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How do you plan to do it? And what do you expect the constructive result to be? Somewhere out there right now, there's somebody, who is approaching 3 or 4 people sitting in a car, and they'll say, hey, man, get in, and let's go such and such a place. Well, yeah, okay, so that's what you all want to do. That's the first question. And you want me to help you do it by getting in the car with you. But then you notice that 2 of the guys are sitting there and they got guns. So now, what do you plan to do and how do you plan to do it? And last but not least, what do you expect the constructive result to be? And you have to get all answers to all of those 4 questions before you get in that car. Is this going to wind up being something constructive? Now, you guys want me to get in the car, and you haven't told me any details and whatnot, but 2 of you got guns. There's 4 of you in the car. You want to make me number 5. Now, this does not look like a constructive enterprise on the surface. So before I get in that car, you're going to have to tell me a whole lot more than what you have told me so far. That's what I'm talking about. Now, if every black person on the planet just starts thinking that way, just those 4 questions, anytime they're in any environment, whether it's around other black people or around white people or anywhere on the planet, you just ask yourself those 4 questions. What is it that they are going to do? What is it they want me to do? What is it that I want to do? Why do I want to do it? How do I plan to do it? And what do I expect the constructive result to be? And that's what a conversation, when people don't want to talk about race directly and whatnot, because these things will solve a whole bunch of problems, including the race problem. And you haven't even mentioned race. If we just make every move that we make constructive, get that understanding before we make any move, before we enroll in a school and whatnot, what am I enrolling in a school for? What do they teach in this school? What's going to be the result when I come out of the school? I'm going to have a piece of paper in my hand. Can I take that piece of paper and get the results that are the most constructive results that anybody has ever gotten in the entire world? Otherwise, why am I going to this school? I mean, come on, give me some answers, sir. Give me some answers, Professor. Give me some answers, Dean. These are the answers that I want before I sign on the dotted line and make all that debt. I mean, I'm signing my life away here because I'm going to have a whole lot of debt. I want you to be able to tell me before I sign anything what the result, if I learn everything that you teach me, what is going to be the result of all that learning? Mm-hmm. See, this is what you call real serious thinking, and this is what getting, fast forward in your entire life in just 4 questions. Fast forward it right there. You got, bam, right there. You got your entire life laid out for you. If you do that each and every day, I have to ask myself those 4 questions. Why am I going to the grocery store? What do I plan to, what do I want to do? I want to go to the store. Why do I want to go to the store? How do I plan to get whatever I'm going to get when I go to the store, and what do I expect the constructive result to be? If I come out of the store with an armload of stuff that I'm going to eat that's really not healthy for me, I need to ask some questions about what I plan to do in the first place, because what's going to be the constructive result? Well, all that stuff that I got in the basket that's going to work against me.
Right. Okay.
So that's the frame of reference. And I haven't even mentioned race. This is for people when you start wanting to talk about the race issue, and they say they don't want to talk about it. Well, they want to talk about something. Otherwise, they wouldn't be talking to you at all. That's family members and everything else who say that, I don't want to talk about this race thing. Okay, well, let's talk about, anything you want to talk about. But these are going to be the 4 questions about what you want to talk about, okay? Because we're going to restrict these. Whatever we talk about, we're going to have these 4 questions are going to be a part of it. It's not restrictive. It's just going to be a part of the flow of the conversation.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Fuller, we've got some people who've been patient and waiting to call.
Right.
Let's take it one at a time. Caller, you're on the air. Go ahead. The one that called before the show started. Let's go there first. You're on the air, caller.
Hi. I just wanted to thank Mr. Neely Fuller. I listen to his show every day. I'm actually from outside the country. I just want to get to my question real quick.
Where are you calling from?
I don't want to say because let's say I'm in the Asia region. Put it this way.
Asia?
Yeah, Asia region. Yes,
Oh,
yes.
my goodness. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for listening.
Yeah, I've been over here, been working over here for 5 years, so yeah.
Well, thank you for calling all the way from the Asia region. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. I want to really thank him because really I really realized that being out here that racism is very much worldwide. It's very much alive. And my quick question is regarding people of other what we call non-white categories, people who are, let's say, Indian, or they call themselves Arab, or they call themselves Asian, because I don't understand why do they hate. A lot of people who I associate or some hate black people, because the thing that I don't understand is theoretically black people are not the ones that are part of the responsibility of killing hundreds and thousands of Syrians, or destabilizing Egypt, or killing thousands of Indians in the past, or sending drones to Pakistan, or sending opium to China. My question is, why is there this hate of black people worldwide? Why? I don't understand how it's justified. So could you please
that is an outstanding question. It really is. Mr. Fuller.
The white supremacists engineered the whole thing. Those white people, not all white people, but whomever those white people are, and they know who they are. They know who they are as of this very minute. They know what they think when it comes to color in people. And I'm talking about those white people collectively throughout the entire planet who believe in mistreating people based on color, engineered a scientific political system called the system of white supremacy, which became the dominant and most powerful political and religious force that the world has ever seen up to this point. There's no system of government more powerful than the system of white supremacy, which is the dominant political and religious system on the planet today. And a part of what they have done is to engineer contempt and hatred and the teaching of the subjugation and the harming of anybody who has color in his or her skin. That's what racism is in the form of white supremacy. There's only one form of race, or one form of racism, because race is racism, and that's to dominate and mistreat people based on color. The white supremacists have mastered that ideology and have spread it all over the world so that there's no place that's exempt from it. So they teach the darker that you are, the more forbidden you are, the more trashed you're supposed to be, the more you're supposed to be treated like trash. The darker you are in your skin color. And so they teach that not only to other white people, but they teach it to the non-white people, the people that they classify as non-white themselves. And they say, now, if there's anybody even in your family that has darker skin than you, then that person is supposed to be treated in a more derogatory fashion. And it's a subliminal thing most of the time, but it manifests itself in everything that's going on the planet. And that's the white supremacist ideology. And the closer you are to being white, the better you're supposed to be treated. This is it. It's a very simple formula. And they say, but nobody is supposed to be treated to the very best except those people classified as white. And then everybody else can fight among themselves about whether or not who's going to be the favorite dark-skinned person of the moment. But everybody will bow down to anyone who is classified as white. That's what the whole ideology is about. And they teach the dark-skinned people to hate themselves as individuals and anybody else that looks like them. This is why there's so much slaughter among the darker-skinned people of the world. They pounce on each other at every chance. They go looking for each other with the purpose of doing harm, not to do anything constructive, not to even have a constructive conversation. It's all hostility. Pass each other on the street and look at each other. I mean, dart their eyes at each other with hostility. This is what it's supposed to be about. And the white supremacists have engineered this many, 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 many years ago, and they have just about perfected it to the extent that the whole world is poisoned by this ideology and this practice. It's not just an ideology. It's a complete practice that covers all areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And that's 24 hours a day, everywhere on the planet Earth. And it's called the system of white supremacy.
Okay, caller, did you want to react in any way to what Mr. Fuller said?
He hit it right on the nail with his response. I've been trying to start a business here, and even just starting a business, I'll talk to people who have a lighter shade of color than me or white. They get things done so quickly, but even for myself, everything is difficult. You're normally supposed to take about a month to get a business started here, and it took me 7 months.
Wow.
7 months. It took me 7 months.
Wow.
And it was clear to me that it was just mistreating people who look like me. And I talked to other black people who are out here, and they got the same treatment. So I totally agree with his statement.
Well, we've seen evidence for a long time. That's what Mr. Fuller is talking about. We've seen evidence all over the world for a long time. Even if you go to India, it's really blatant there. If you go back to the so-called Arabs during the slavery, it's really blatant there. It's just blatant all over the world. And it would appear, as Mr. Fuller is saying, is that it doesn't appear to be going anywhere. And now we're seeing it had gone into a covert phase, but now we're seeing it expose and come out even over in this area of the world with the Donald Sterling stuff and all of those Cleveland Bundys. These are not just random accidental statements that get put out there. There is a whole mentality that is coming up from this, and I think it makes what Mr. Fuller has been saying all of these years so on the mark until, hopefully people will begin to, I think people are going to begin to look at this again, and they're going to begin to see what reality is. And you said you've seen it all over the world, so that's pretty dynamite. Stay right there. Let me go to my second caller. The first caller, stay on the line. Let's go to the second caller, the one who hadn't had a chance to ask Mr. Fuller a question. Go ahead, caller.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.
I got to talk real quick because I'm at work.
Okay. No problem. Thank you. Go ahead.
I wanted to comment, Brother Kahari, from last week. Mentioned that there are basically 147 or so.
147 corporations, yes.
Yeah, and I was researching that, and I was blown away by it. You had a guest on the show, Miss Montgomery, last week.
Yes.
You all were talking about gentrification and eminent domain and how they can.
Right. Yeah. Mr. Fuller really laid that out. He really laid that out. Yeah. Go ahead.
I wanted Mr. Fuller's thoughts because Miss Montgomery had asked him, "What do you tell victims of white supremacy in regards to gentrification and how to deal with it?" And
well, actually, a caller called in and asked that question. And, okay. That was a caller, but go ahead.
Okay, and Mr. Fuller at one point stated that we shouldn't accumulate a lot. And one of the replies to what he said was, does that mean that we shouldn't try to attain success? And he mentioned in the code how we need to avoid excess. We need to avoid trying to constantly get possessions because that distracts from focusing on solving race problems. And I just wanted him to expound on his thoughts regarding that a little bit more, because I think that a lot of non-white people get so distracted with accumulation and getting more and more houses and
okay, hold on.
Greed
Mr. Fuller, you're not able to hear what he's saying at all?
Not at all.
Oh, my goodness. I don't know why that should be. Essentially what he's saying is that there was a conversation we had, if you recall the conversation we had last week, when one of the callers called in and asked about gentrification. Okay, I'm sure you recall that, Mr. Fuller. And he was talking about, you said that in the code you shouldn't try to do material access. You shouldn't try to be so caught up in materialism that you become excessive. But he also said, does that mean that you shouldn't try to strive for success? So basically what I hear him asking is, should you try to be successful? And where is the line between successful and excessive? Am I correct, caller?
No, well, not exactly. What I'm asking is,
okay,
I already agree that you shouldn't accumulate a lot, but one of the callers that he was responding to felt like he was saying that accumulation equals success.
Uh-huh.
And drawing the line between the two so black people don't get distracted from the real issue.
Okay, so what is your question?
So the question is, you summed it up basically. Can he just distinguish between
the two?
A good line to draw so black people don't get caught up
crossover. Okay,
to the point where they get distracted.
Gotcha. They don't get caught up in materialism, and they forget the real goal. Okay, Mr. Fuller, that's what he's asking.
Well, it goes right back to the fundamentals of what's constructive and what's non-constructive. Every move that we make is either constructive or non-constructive. There's no such thing as in between. That keeps it real simple, and that's something that can jump to a person's mind real quick without a whole lot of rhetoric that goes on for hours and hours and hours, and people wind up just going in a circle. I mean, you look at anything, any move that you get ready to make, and you ask, well, wait a minute. If I make this move, is it going to have a result that's constructive or non-constructive? And that's all day long. If you just do that all day long, just put everything in one of those two categories, everything will automatically fall in place. Whether you choose to do it or not, you will know exactly where you're going. You'll always have a handle on what you're doing and why you're doing it, because the result is what you're looking for. And the result's either going to be constructive or non-constructive. If you're getting ready to buy that car, so you're saying, what do I want to do? Okay, why do you want to do it? Now, if you want to do it to impress your neighbors, then you have to ask yourself that bottom line question. Is this constructive? I mean, so I impress my neighbors, so they are impressed. All right, so now what have I got? I got a car payment. This means that I got to get an extra job on this very expensive vehicle. Okay, now is that constructive? Is this going to produce a constructive result just to impress my neighbors, some other black people who are struggling to make it, and I'm struggling to make it? I mean, what is this funny business all about? I mean, does this make sense? Is it constructive? Is it going to produce a constructive result? Are people going to shower me with all kind of gifts on account of this fancy car that I bought? Or are they going to pay my house note? Or are they going to see to it that I have money to send an offspring off to college because I have a fancy car parked in the driveway? So maybe the answer to that question is, this may not be a constructive move. Maybe I ought to keep this vehicle that I got and just put an extra coat of polish on it and let it go at that. Just a simple thing like that. Every move that you make, you gauge it, whether it's going to be constructive or non-constructive. You don't have to use a whole lot of fancy words. See, that keeps the language real simple. Constructive, non-constructive. Cause and effect. These are the laws of the universe. Black people have not been tapping into the laws of the universe, meaning getting the most constructive result out of every move that you make. And that includes conversations. If you say something, you say, is this conversation constructive? And if it is constructive, how is it constructive? By producing what result? Because it always comes down to what the result is going to be of every move that you make. There's a lot of black people making a lot of moves right now as we speak. And some of them, and this brings up a subject that I was thinking about talking about when I was asked the initial question. What are some of the people have been talking to me about? And that is some of the prominent black politicians. Many of them are on their way to jail because they haven't learned the lesson that in that hokey movie, that I sometimes refer to, going back to 1972, Godfather 1 or Godfather 2 in 1974, Don Corleone told Michael what? Whomever approaches you to set up this meeting is a traitor. Don't forget that.
Mr. Fuller, stay right there. We've got much more. Callers, if you can hang on in there. We got a lot more to cover. Stay right there. More to come. This is the Compensatory Concept, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
Okay, so they call this stuff ecstasy? Interesting. Have you heard about nausea, paranoia? How about the terrible Tuesdays? See, here's the thing about ecstasy. After spending a whole night partying, you can crash, and some serious depression can set in. Suddenly, life without X doesn't seem so great. So you do it again and again and again, and the more you do it, the more you want it. And then you can't figure out how to enjoy life without it. Doesn't sound like ecstasy at all. But hey, the choice is yours. Just don't say I didn't warn you.
Sponsored by ONDCP in partnership for a drug-free America.
TalkTainmentRadio.com is the premier internet radio platform offering 40-plus talk radio-style programs professionally produced, optimized for online distribution, featuring Columbus, Ohio on-air personalities. TalkTainmentRadio.com offers listeners diverse programming options covering topics such as arts and culture, love, life and relationships, technology, religion, paranormal activities, local and national politics, women's issues, alongside health and wellness. Listeners can access their favorite TalkTainmentRadio.com programs free of cost through the website. Download the TTR app to your cell phone and you can take us wherever you go. We have programs on demand to fit your schedule through our podcast. The address is TalkTainmentRadio.com.
Have you ever wished you could spend more time with your kids, or maybe quality time with your spouse, when you can actually have an uninterrupted conversation? Do you owe your dad a little catch-up time? Well, it's time to reconnect, and no activity can bond a family together quite like boating and fishing. Think of all the great experiences you had as a kid when you went boating or fishing. Well, guess what? It's still great. Boating and fishing are the perfect opportunities for your family to get away, to talk, to laugh, to create new memories. So take someone you love out on the water and see where the water takes you. If you haven't been on the water in a while and you're not sure where to start, or if you just like to have some helpful tips for your next trip, please visit TakeMeFishing.org. This has been a public service of TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. Call area code 202-484-5461. 202-484-5461.
For information on everything from passports to driver's licenses to local weather, go to firstgov.gov. Firstgov.gov, the official source for federal, state, and local government information.
Years ago, identical twins were separated at birth. Chris Paul was destined for Major Basketball. Cliff Paul was destined to become a State Farm agent. They shared one invaluable trait. They were both born to assist. Find an agent born to get you to a better state.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
You got the power.
This is the Compensatory Concept, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard. Of course, the Compensatory Concept can be heard every week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's Eastern Standard Time around the world, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. But you can hear the replays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today and at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight. 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight. Also, if you don't catch it, you can catch Mr. Fuller's replays. They're called oh my goodness, I'm thinking about iPods. anyway, they talk about podcasts. You can hear the podcast 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Podcasts are simply rebroadcasts of earlier programs that you may have missed, programs that we do. They're called podcasts. So, Mr. Fuller?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's see if we can open up the line. Whoops. Uh-oh. Looks like I lost Mr. Fuller. Let me see if we can get him back. Okay, Mr. Fuller, you there?
I'm here.
Okay, sorry about that. Let's open up the lines at 821. I'm sorry. 1-877-932-9766. 1-877-932-9766. Looks like Mr. Fuller, I'm thinking about Saturday morning when I gave that other number.
No problem.
Okay. So, Mr. Fuller, a lot of things have been happening all over the world. A lot of people, of course, want to talk to you. This worldwide hatred of black people, we see that evidenced all over the world. And, of course, you remember when we did the show about the bleaching cream down in Brazil, in India, in everywhere, in Arabia, everywhere where large numbers of black people live. This whole concept of whitening up, bleaching your skin, whiter is better, as opposed to it lessening up or going away, Mr. Fuller, this thing has increased. Mr. Fuller, let me get your thoughts on this.
Well, if you're going to have a system of white supremacy, you have to make anything that's not white derogatory. That just goes with the logic. If you follow the logic, if you say white is right, and then particularly when you use the language, you will match the word white with the word right, then you're on your way. Because then all over the world you say, well, whatever is white is right. Whatever is white, if you look in many dictionaries, you'll say whiteness is pure. White is angelic. Snow white. Okay? This is something to embellish. This is something to praise.
Mm-hmm.
Whiteness is associated with rightness and purity. See what I mean? Black is derogatory. They call dark-skinned people the mud people. And
we hear it all the time, defeat the dark side.
Yes, the dark side.
It was a dark day.
It was a dark day. And then watch this. They will say things like, I'm in a real dark mood today. Now, how can you tell that a mood is dark? I mean, has anybody ever photographed a mood? Maybe it is. I don't know. But but then what is the quality of the mood if it's dark?
Uh-huh.
I mean, it might be an excellent quality if you can photograph it. I mean, but I've never heard of anybody actually photographing a mood. But, it just goes on and on and on and on. I mean, they'll call it a dark day. I mean, like 9/11 was considered a dark day in the history of the world. But actually, it was a very sunny day.
Very
I
similar.
mean, when those planes hit those towers.
Mm-hmm.
If it had been a dark day, they wouldn't have been able to find the buildings and probably wound up in the ocean. See, so you got a lot of contradictions, too. But the white supremacy system is full of contradictions because they will say that the way that they operate things, I mean, is the best possible way. Yet their entire system is based on deceit and violence. They glorify murder in the system of white supremacy. They have to, because they are going to stay in business by murdering a whole bunch of people and getting a whole bunch of dark-skinned people to murder each other. That goes with the territory. And so this is very important to the system of race, which race, by the way, is racism. There's only one race, and that's the white race.
No matter which race you run in.
Yes. I mean, when you're talking about color, all right, well, if you're talking about the color of people, there's only one race, and that is the white race.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing as a human race. Think about the terms, human race. What would a human being be racing against?
Interesting.
I mean, you're humane. That's an activity, being humane, meaning treating people correctly. That's what humaneness means. It means being just, guaranteeing that no one is mistreated, and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. That's what the compensatory definition of justice is. I had to make up a definition for justice because in 1994, I found out there was no legal definition for the word justice. Everybody talks about justice, but how do you know when you got it and you don't have a definition for it? I looked up the word justice in many dictionaries, and it was vague. It still is vague. In all the dictionaries I've looked at, they'll say fairness. Now watch that. Fairness is also associated with what? Whiteness. They say justice is synonymous with being fair. And then they'll say, my fair lady. And then they'll say, what do you mean fair? Well, white. So they associate the word justice with whiteness, even though the words don't even sound alike. And then you cap it by not even giving a definition for the word justice except to say fair play or something vague like that. And so your mind automatically goes to the word white. In other words, you can get justice, but it only comes in the form of somebody who is white. That's the way the mind will work. And how does this happen? Because the white supremacists engineered it that way. That's why.
Okay.
They engineered the language to support what they're already doing, which is pure evil.
Mr. Fuller, we got some callers backed up, and I want to get to one. Lady, ma'am from Chicago, you're on the air with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
And thank you so much for your show. I listen to it regularly on YouTube.
Thank you.
But today I decided to call in live, and I really have the utmost respect and admiration for Mr. Fuller because he is reachable. Mr. Fuller, you had a conversation with me a few months back.
Let me jump in here. Let me jump in here and say something. You can also, you don't have to listen to it on YouTube. You can go to talktainmentradio.com.
That's where I'm at now.
Yeah, you can go talk, and you can listen to the podcast. So you can listen to it live, and then you can listen to it 3 times on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and then 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or you can go and listen to us 24 hours a day on our podcast. All you have to do is go to talktainmentradio.com, click programs, and then look for compensatory concept. And then click it on, and there it is. Okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak on your show today also. I was listening to various shows, and Mr. Fuller had a show called about how our white people evil. And I listened to that this morning, and I noticed from the Santa Barbara shooter to a story they had on CNN about white people, young white men feeling privileged, and if anything interferes with their privilege, then they become violent, and they want to hurt not just themselves but everyone around them. And, I just want to compare that with Chicago also, because every day I check the news in the morning with the, immediate story of how many people were shot in Chicago. Like over this past weekend, it was 6 people killed. That's between Friday and Sunday evening, and about 20 people wounded. So it's kind of like a war zone here, if you're really aware. And then I just want to touch on, I'm just bringing these scenarios together for my question for Mr. Fuller. And then I just read about the 12-year-old white girls in Wisconsin that premeditated attempted murder against their best friend. Okay. They had a sleepover and invited the girl, and this is their best friend now, invited the girl into the woods and went on a stabbing rampage on her because they said that this slender man, internet creation, is speaking to them and telling them that they need to do things to get his attention or some type of accolades or whatever from this mysterious being. So my question is to ask Mr. Fuller to expound on the evil pathological mentality of white people and how that's affecting our people and our culture.
Mr. Fuller?
Well, if I understand the question, is she asking white people basically evil?
Is that what you? Is that the essential question? Are white people basically evil? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, and how it's affecting us.
And what impact does it have on black people? Okay, go ahead.
And creating the victimization of us.
And creating the victimization. Okay, Mr. Fuller?
Well, I couldn't answer the question. See, I say I don't know, because then it comes down to, are black people basically evil? And we're all capable of doing things that shouldn't be done. That's the way I choose to frame it. And we do things that shouldn't be done. Every person on the planet, and this is what I have written and I stick with it, is seriously flawed. But we become more flawed under a system that produces flawed people. And the major system on this planet that governs the people of this planet is the system of white supremacy. And that system is a flawed system because it's based on deception and violence. That's what it does. Those two elements is what drives the system of white supremacy. Deceit and violence to the detriment of the people of the entire planet who are classified as non-white.
Mm-hmm.
Black, brown, red, yellow, tan, beige, anybody who has color in his or her skin. Whoever thought up the system of racism said, now it's going to be based on a system. We're going to do all business in every area of activity, everywhere, on the basis of being able to look at a person and say, ask the question, does that person have color in his or her skin? Mm-hmm. We're going to run the entire world based on nothing but that.
Uh-huh.
Does that person have color in his or her skin? And if he or she has color in his or her skin, now that person is eligible for mistreatment. You can do anything you want to with that person, and nobody's supposed to stop it. Nobody's supposed to do anything about it, anything derogatory. And you will teach that person to do every type of evil that you can possibly think of. That will be a part of your curriculum for that person.
Mr. Fuller, let's stop right here. Let's get a definition of evil. Mr. Fuller, what do you mean when you use the term evil? And I'd like to get the caller's definition, too, because that's a word that gets tossed around. Mr. Fuller.
Something that is ultimately non-constructive and incorrect. That's all. It's going to have a non-constructive result. Something that is very destructive. Whatever is going to cause destruction is evil. That's basically it.
Okay.
Now, everybody is capable of doing something that is destructive. And the white supremacist wants to emphasize destructive activity, evil activity, something that's going to always have a non-constructive result among dark-skinned people. This is their goal. They don't want to see non-white people doing anything that's constructive. They panic when they see that. If you're doing anything that makes sense, they practically lose their minds. No, we can't have them like that. We got to have them in a state of mind where they're doing stupid stuff all the time, destructive stuff all the time. Anytime that you look up and dark-skinned people are coming around, something very ugly is going to happen, because they're going to make ugly things happen because we teach them to do ugly things, and we want to keep them in that frame of mind. If we lose that grasp on being able to control their behavior in a manner that they are non-constructive, except when we want them to be constructive. When we want them to be constructive for our benefit, then we'll allow them to do something constructive. But when they're among each other, see to it, watch them real close, and see to it that they don't do anything constructive. Because when they do something constructive, it means we're out of business. And we don't intend to be out of business. And what is our business? Mistreating people based on color. That's our business. That's our reason for being. That's our only reason for wanting to even breathe or be on the planet. What is the purpose of white supremacy? Mistreating people based on color for the fun, glory, and material benefit of people who are classified as white. That's the purpose of white supremacy in the modern day. Initially, it may have been another purpose, like genetic survival. But now they have been on such a roll for so long, it's for fun, glory, and material gain for the benefit of people classified as white, and for the complete confusion, destruction, and self-destruction among people classified as non-white. That's how they think the entire planet should be run forever. That's their mentality.
Okay, let me go to my second caller. Hold on for a minute, caller. I got another caller. Hold on.
Excuse me, sir.
Well, hold on for a minute. Hold on for a minute. I got another caller. I want to try to get that caller in also, because we're really running tight on time, if you don't mind. I don't mean, I want to give the other caller a chance.
Wanted my comment, and I just want to say that I agree with Mr. Fuller insofar as his definition of evil.
Okay.
Because when you lie and misinform people and spin illusions, you don't give people an opportunity to, exercise the truth.
I appreciate that.
And that is evil control. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Have a great day.
Appreciate your call. Okay, next caller, you're on the air. I'm waiting on you. Go ahead. Go ahead, caller.
Hi, thank you.
You can speak up a little bit.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you better. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. It's nice to finally have words with you. I have an observation as well as a question. My first observation, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the incident that's going on right now over in Sudan with the couple, the woman, she was pregnant, and she was accused of what's called apostasy in Islam. Now, this is a fairly dark-skinned couple, and without getting into the details, the main point of it is she was convicted of basically leaving her religious faith. She was raised by her mother, who was a Christian, but her father was Muslim. And so by Sharia law, they convicted her of basically giving up her Islamic faith. Her argument was, I never was Muslim. So they convicted this woman to 100
Wait a minute. Hold on for a minute. Hold on, caller. I've got another caller on. Go ahead.
Okay. How are you?
Wait a minute, caller. Hold on. I've got another caller that's speaking, so I'll get to you as soon as I can. Go ahead, caller.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead. Okay, the caller that was talking, go ahead. Finish up.
All right. They convicted her to 100 lashes and to be hanged after she gave birth to her baby. So she was like 8 months pregnant when they did this conviction. And, I mean, these are like people who have a really good education and everything like this. Her husband, he's a, like a biochemist.
Right.
And they're like, we don't care.
Right.
And so the thing is like.
So what is your question? And the reason I asked you because we're really running tight on time. So go ahead and ask your question.
My point is white supremacy really it flexed its muscle right in front of everybody, because this is an issue of religious and tradition in Sudan. So the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and the Netherlands, they saw this going on, and they said, well, we don't care about your customs and your religion because we created Sharia law under a colonial construct.
Right.
And they actually stepped in, and they, even though the Sudani government,
let me give Mr. Fuller.
The marriage.
Let me have Mr. Fuller give him, because we're really running down on time. Mr. Fuller, let me get your response.
It's called a system of white supremacy. There's no such thing as the Netherlands or the United States of America or none of this when you start talking about race. These are all ideas, the United States of America. The only thing that's real is the system of white supremacy. Use those terms, otherwise we get more and more confusion. When you talk about race, it's just one thing to talk about, the system of white supremacy. That's it. That's it. There's no such thing as nationalities and all the rest of it. And it is the strongest religion in the world. So if it's people being stoned to death who are dark-skinned anywhere on the planet, the white supremacists, if they didn't engineer it in the beginning, they are the ones who are continuing it, making it continue to go on. Just as long as it's destructive, it has a destructive effect among non-white people. That's all they're interested in. They're interested in the bottom line. They don't care how you get there. They don't care how you use or what your ideology is or what your religion is and all like that. They will look at it. And if it means that some non-white person is going to die or be destroyed or suffer or be hungry or starve to death, then they'll rubber stamp it.
Okay. Next caller who's waiting to talk to Mr. Fuller, go ahead.
Sir.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I have a question. Being as we're creating Mr. Fuller has created a new doctrine that is a countermeasure to the white supremacist doctrine. Would you say that since yours is newer than theirs, and their doctrine does not account for yours, would you say that theirs has slightly become dogmatic in the sense that it's become absolute truth for them? And as it being absolute truth for them, like in Rome, when they had this world domination doctrine that became dogma, it became truth, but it wasn't the absolute justice or absolute truth. Do you think that it's a very good countermeasure, or like it gives us the opportunity as victims to remove that victimhood?
You talking about the code as a countermeasure?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Mr. Fuller, we've got about we're a little less than 2 minutes left. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
The code as a countermeasure will point to the way we need to go so that it doesn't become just some type of abstract dogma just for the sake of having a dogma. The aim is to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. And so that we don't get lost, we have to have a very precise definition for the word justice, which is why I came up with a compensatory definition for it. It has two parts: guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. That's no person, white or non-white. That's number one. Number two, guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Now, that's everywhere on the planet. Yes, yes, and that's something you can always measure so you don't get lost, and that some dictator or somebody, can come up and say that I know everything, and so you take this as my way or the highway. That keeps anybody from doing that, because you will have a criteria to measure everything by. A person is either being mistreated or they're not. A person either has constructive help or they don't. This is something you can measure every day. And this is what the basis for the code is. You replace the system of racism with the system of justice.
Okay, we're going to have to hold it right there. Mr. Fuller, thank you so much. We always appreciate you.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, and thank you out there for listening, and we hope you keep on listening and keep those calls coming. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Compensatory Concept. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The most important question in all racial matters is why. One should always ask it.
Radio, the way it should be heard.